This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803-427-5944.
Okay. All right. So this is the Pure Wisdom Podcast. It's a personal growth podcast. We talk about pretty much everything personal growth, self-improvement, business, fitness, philosophy, mindset, psychology, anything that has to do with the self-improvement or personal growth aspect. I here recently I've been trying to hit a lot of things that I feel like should be mainstream, but for whatever reason are not mainstream. Because in the personal development and self-improvement world, there's a lot of like new things that are kind of like coming up, like things like cold water therapy, the whole ice bath things. Something I just realized recently, journaling, I didn't realize was as powerful as it is, for mindset and psychology. And so there's a lot of things that I feel like don't have the awareness that we should have awareness about. Because when it comes to fitness and stuff like that, we just think of the typical, the stuff that's been around for generations, the protein, the rest, the recovery, that kind of thing. But there's a lot that goes into it these days that I think people are finding out about that maybe doesn't get the attention it should. So here recently, that's kind of what I've been trying to focus on. Maybe those things that aren't as popular as they should be. So,
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot to dig into because it seems like every day they, being scientists, they are coming up with they're finding new things that are improving us in new ways. And I guess that's a good thing, but it's just like, I don't know how we get to the point we like here in America, we go to school a minimum of 12, 13 years. If you include, kindergarten, 14, I guess, if it's preschool, but there's a lot of things we don't know about. And maybe we didn't know about them then, or maybe we're just not taught about them. And this goes from not just physical health, man. There's like, financial education.
Oh, I know. It's a joke in school.
We're not taught finance. We're not taught, basically how to care for your body, as far as physical, mental health goes. And so anyways, there's a lot of things that I feel like, we just don't know. And
I hope your podcast takes off wildly. I think it's so good just having those conversations. I wish you all the best in this.
Well, I do appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. So what's up with you, man? Just because if I try to introduce you, the reason I don't introduce people is because I will inevitably leave something out, something that is of significant of importance. Yeah. So
once you introduce your podcast, just say, here's our guest, and then I'll tell people what I do.
Yeah. So floor is yours.
Ideally, I help people get to the root cause of chronic health conditions they're experiencing. All the people who've fallen through the cracks of Western medicine, sometimes even of functional medicine and chiropractic. So.
Okay. So would you say that you focus on like a lot of, I don't want to use the word holistic, but like, would you say there's a lot of holistic, like medicine maybe, or practices?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if holistic's the right word.
It's close enough. Okay. Sometimes I disagree with holistic medicine too, but I'm on the holistic side of things.
Okay. So anything maybe that's like not traditional medicine, would you say? I mean, like this stuff that you kind of focus on and study and work with, it's not traditional.
No, not at all. It should be. I mean, it's systems that all these traditional medicines work with, supposedly, but they just put pills over all of it. So
yeah, there's a pill for everything. Mm-hmm. So like, how did you like this stuff that you study and that you like look at, practice or whatever? How did you find out about this stuff? Like what? Like, I mean, where did this all like? Because we were talking about some things last time, and I guess we'll get into this. But there's some of this stuff like I've never even heard of. So like, where did you just like go down the rabbit hole of like studying this stuff, and then like one thing led to the other? Or
well, I've been in all of these in this industry for 16 years. So I started out in massage and body work, and one of the frustrating things in that industry is that people are always rubbing what hurts and stretching what's tight. So you'll have a session, somebody will feel good for like 2 hours, and then the pain comes back. And I got really sick of those results. So you start asking different questions. You're like, well, why is this happening? Why does this neck pain keep coming back? And at first, I just approached it through the musculoskeletal angle. So we did postural correction, myofascial release, strengthening exercises. But then you start digging deeper. And you're like, okay, well, chronic pain is related to inflammation. So what causes inflammation? What is the response in the body? And then you get to the immune system. That's how I got into lymphatic work, because the lymphatic system is what clears inflammation out of the body. And then you're like, well, how do you optimize lymphatic health? And that's getting all your systems working together. So the liver is what produces like 50% of your lymph. And so in order to have healthy lymph, you need a healthy liver. In order for that to be working well, you need your bile flow. The liver produces bile. Bile, among many things, is a binder. So it binds to toxins, takes them out of the body by way of the colon. So you need to be having regular bowel movements to get any of this going. And then you start digging into, okay, well, I've dealt with the lymphatic system. I've done all this. How come people still aren't getting better? And that's when you deal with more root cause issues, whether it's the industrial toxins, our pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, like glyphosate. There's some mold, there's some parasites. Sometimes that gets a little too wacky for people. They don't quite make those connections. So I don't talk about that a whole lot. I will once people get to know me, and sometimes that scares them off in the beginning. They're like, oh, this girl put her tinfoil hat on. But yeah, so that's how I got into all of it. And I get clients who have had these questions for a really long time, and then they don't get very good success with the doctors. The doctor's like, oh, here's this pill. And they get sick of that. And so with them, we get to collaborate and like, okay, let's come up with a different plan. So for 16 years, I've just been figuring out lots of questions and digging with people. And I'm presented with lots of new health challenges every day on a daily basis. So
yeah. See, what you just said about the liver, about how the liver absorbs and like basically filters. I didn't know that. Like I could be mistaken, but I feel like in, high school education, the main education or whatever, the 12, 13, 14 years it was, I was under the impression that the liver just absorbed toxins and it was just it was just there. It didn't exit the body any kind of way. I knew that I know the kidneys filter. I think the kidneys actually filter the blood, if I'm not mistaken. And then, but anyways, but yeah, so that the point that you just made, like, I didn't even know that. And then you were talking about the lymphatic system too. Like, did we talk about this last time? Is there a connection with that and the immune system? Is that right? Or am I thinking about that?
Huge connection.
Yeah. And so, okay, so we'll get to that. Let me back up just for a second. You were talking about your clients. So what do you, I guess maybe what do you do? Like what's a client? What kind of are you still in the, how did you phrase it? The massage?
Massage and body work. I still do a lot of that.
Okay.
So I have that hands-on portion of my practice, but then I have a virtual portion of my practice. So that I teach programs and just teach people how to do this stuff. They don't need my hands on them. So I teach them a lot of self-care techniques, DIY, lymphatic drainage. We work on through my course or one-on-one. I work through root cause issues with people. So in the stuff I address, it's like underlying dental infections, sinus issues that people are experiencing. And then we get into like mold, parasites, all sorts of different things, but really helping people detox. And then there's a big focus on nutrition, but depending on where a person comes to me, it could be, hey, let's just get this garbage out of your diet. Or like you've tried all of this stuff, you still have food sensitivities. Let's try specific food filters like oxalates or histamines or lectin filters, see if that improves your symptoms. And if that's not working, there's probably something underlying all of that that's driving those sensitivities. So that's the type of stuff I'm working with everybody, and everybody's a little bit different, but yeah, so I work virtually that way, but I still see a lot of people in person in Orlando.
Okay. So, but I want to move on to this other stuff, but before we get away from the massage stuff, first of all, I'm a big believer in muscular massage. I try to get one regularly if I can. But what are your thoughts on something like something that improves flexibility, like yoga? Because I hear that like the I guess the massaging the muscle helps with relaxing the muscle, but flexibility. So like what I hear is that flexibility is just as equally as important as strength. And if you focus on like strength continuously and you're not flexible enough, you could actually be causing not damage, but you won't be able to use the strength in 100%, that you could use it.
Right. That's an argument in the strength and conditioning world. Depending on who you're learning from, some will say that strength and stability come first, and other people will say that mobility and flexibility come first. In my experience,
Okay.
I've always
Yeah,
considered
I don't know, man. I feel like every time I feel like stiff for lack of a better word, I feel like a massage is the answer. But I mean, that's only going to help your muscles, right? That doesn't do anything for the joints, I would imagine. I mean, I guess if the muscles are loose around the joints, it could help the joints. But as far as the ligaments and the tendons and things like that, um, I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating.
this. I could talk about this for 3 hours. So a lot of people, they go in and get a massage, and massage therapists lie, not intentionally, but they just don't know certain things. I am not stretching your fascia. I am not stretching your muscles necessarily when I'm doing a massage. What I'm doing is working with your nervous system, and as your nervous system relaxes, that is what gives you that flexibility. That's what helps fascia loosen up. So it's really more communication with the nervous system. When you're doing massage with lymphatic techniques in mind, that's really going to help joint health. So if somebody is having pain in their joints, that's the first thing I look at, because we have a lot of lymph nodes located around our joints. So if somebody has joint pain, I start doing lymphatic drainage on them, and a lot of times their pain levels really decrease.
Mhm.
It's been an interesting journey. Everybody's a tiny bit different, but stretching is really cool because that not only helps get your fascia healthy. Oh goodness, I'll even come back to that. So stretching is going to help your lymph flow.
Mhm.
But one thing that everybody neglects, which is why my background has been so cool, all the functional medicine, all the nutritionists, they're doing these detox protocols, but they miss the fascial component. So
Mhm.
fascia, I mean, that starts forming really quickly after conception, and it lays the framework for everything in our body to be laid down. So fascia surrounds all of your nerves. It surrounds all of your blood vessels. So if your fascia is not healthy, that's going to impede healthy nerve and nerve function and lymphatic flow. Um, and movement and hydration are two things that really improve the health of your fascia. Stretching would be included in that. So as you're doing stretching, that is going to that's going to help all of those systems start working together better again. I'm always like, massage is great, stretching is great. There
Mhm.
are assisted stretching that somebody else helps you with, and then you do stretching yourself. I'm always a fan of people doing things themselves, specifically because it teaches their nervous system how to do it.
Right.
There's only so much I can do from an outside perspective. You have to communicate with your nervous system that I want my body doing this. I can help people along the way, but there comes a point where it's really in a person's hands to make those movements. And if tissue is tight, I can help open that up so they get a better range.
Okay.
Did all of that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. So like I'm really trying to follow this, but there's so many things that I've never heard about before. I don't even know what fascia is. But I'm trying to follow. So like what is fat? Is that something in the you said the vessels themselves, or it surrounds the vessel? It's like bodily tissue, I guess.
Yeah, fascia is a type of connective tissue. So, like our bones, our muscles, our tendons, ligaments, those are connective tissue.
Hmm.
Um, even blood is a connective tissue, but fascia is another type of that. And instead of beginning and ending at a joint like our muscles do, fascia goes from head to toe. So there's one line of fascia, I was just looking at it the other day, that
Hmm.
can be dissected from the body, and it goes from your tongue. It goes down. It includes your diaphragm. It goes through the adductors, which are your inner thigh muscles, and it goes all the way into the plantar fascia of your foot. So when I look at people, I'm like, okay, if they're having a foot problem, do I need to start looking at the tongue? Because all of that fascia is connected from head to toe. You can dissect quite a few very specific lines out of the body. fascial lines out of the body. That's work from Tom Myers. He did something called kinesis myofascial integration.
Mm-hmm.
And the parent of that is structural integration. But he did the dissection work, and you can take these entire lines that go from head to toe out of the body. And so instead of thinking of the body as separate and 600 individual muscles, think of it like one muscle poured into, or 600 muscles poured into one pocket of fascial webbing. So it's just from head to toe. It's everywhere. It's around our nerves, our lymphatic vessels. It through our bones. It's through our organs. It's everywhere.
So I think so. I think when people say, you know, you get a massage, you massage the muscles or whatever, that flushes toxins out of your body. Is this why? Is this why a massage is this how a massage does that, I guess?
Yeah, you start getting the fascia healthier, and as the fascia opens up, it's going to allow lymph to flow better, and that's what people are talking about when they don't say that. They're like, "Oh, massage is going to bring on a detox reaction," and it could, but that's part of the reason.
Okay. I feel so lost right now. Like I've never heard of this before. All I know is when I get a massage, I feel better. When I stretch, I feel more flexible. But I mean, it's
That's
crazy.
all you need to know. That's all you
Well,
need to know.
I mean, but like I never like what I'm trying to say though is I never knew this was even a thing. Like we hear tendons, we hear, you know, blood vessels, we hear joints, whatever, but like ligaments, whatever it is, but like these things we don't know about. And it's crazy too because you mentioned going from your tongue all the way down to your foot. Like I was having some low back pain a while back, and I started stretching out my legs in a different way, my hips, and like the back pain disappeared. And you would not think that it's connected like that, but it was like I can't believe that stretching out what seems like an irrelevant part of the body, you know, it benefits a different part of the body. I mean,
Oh, it's amazing.
And it's like all these things are connected. I feel like I can't even comment on some of this stuff because I don't. It's my understanding of it is so little, so limited that I can't even. I'm processing, I'm comprehending it, but like I'm hearing about this for the first time, basically.
Cool. I
So
love people like that.
yeah. So okay. So you mentioned like during all this process about the lymphatic system, like there's lymph nodes around your knees. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're behind your knees. So in that soft, squishy place, you've got lymph nodes in there.
Is this like directly behind the kneecap, like behind the knee itself?
Yeah, behind the knee itself. Like if you would put your finger behind your leg and bend it, you get between those hamstring tendons. There are lymph nodes back there.
Okay, I'm wearing blue jeans, so it might be kind of hard to do. But so, like, what is a person like when you say? Because we talked about this before too, the lymphatic system. I don't know if you want to kind of explain maybe what that is before we talk about how to cleanse it and drain it. Because again, the lymphatic system, I knew that lymph nodes were a thing, but a thing as big as they are, that what you're talking about, I never knew that. Like I never knew that you could basically well, I'll let you explain it how to do that stuff. But so like just kind of like a summary of the lymphatic system. What is that about?
So most people, when they think of the lymphatic system, they either think of lymphoma, so cancer. They think of being sick and having swollen lymph nodes,
That's what I thought.
or they think about having surgery and getting a lymph node removed, and therefore you need lymphatic drainage in the context of swelling, and that's what 99% of people think of. But your lymphatic system, think of an aquarium that's filled with your fish, your plants, your coral, and that the water's beautiful. It's continuously infused with that oxygen from whatever their bubblers or whatever. But the conditions in that aquarium are maintained by the filtration system. So that underlying network of the pipes and the filters and the pumps, it's not fancy, it's not super cool, but it's essential for keeping that aquarium healthy. Then think about what happens when the pipes stop working or the filters get clogged. Your water stagnates, it gets cloudy. If that slimy green algae is over everything, your fish get sick, sometimes they die. You can empty out everything in the tank and clean it off, but if you don't fix that filtration system, that sickness, quote unquote sickness, is going to come right back. So our lymphatic system is continuously working just like that filtration system, and it's nourishing our cells. So in order to the lymphatic system clears away waste and toxins from within and around our cells. That when you clear away the waste and toxins, that's going to allow the nutrients and oxygen to get into your cells. So like in that aquarium, if you have all the yuckiness in there, the nutrients can't get in.
Right.
It just is gross. So the lymphatic system is what filters and cleans all of that out at the cellular level. Then it brings it back into the bloodstream, and that's where it's filtered by the liver, by the kidneys, and the waste is taken out of the body. Toxins are taken out of the body by way of the liver, by way of kidneys, all of that.
So I guess so it only makes sense then when somebody has like a major, like I'm pretty sure like a major symptom of HIV, and it probably a symptom of a lot of things, but like swollen lymph nodes are like a symptom of a pretty major sickness, right? Like, I mean, and I guess that's why.
Yes. So we can all have lymphatic congestion because of just there's so much toxicity in the world coming at us to process, like our air pollution, water, stuff in our food, all of that. So we can get lymphatic congestion. Sometimes that can create swollen lymph nodes, but if you have ongoing swollen lymph nodes to that degree, if your lymphatic system is always fighting something off, then you have an underlying issue that needs to be addressed. So that could be a virus, that any type of virus, a bacterial infection that you don't know about.
So it filters. So basically, the lymph nodes filter our blood. Basically, is that right? Is that like a watered down version of what they do?
The lymph nodes filter lymph.
Okay.
And then lymph goes back into the bloodstream. It's this continuous circuit, but the lymph is what cleans us out down to a cellular level. So it's like scrubbing the interstitial fluid that's within and around the cells.
Right. Okay. So okay, so you mentioned draining this system, like I guess doing this. I guess it does this at somehow itself. I don't want to say automatically, but just by itself. But then there's a way to do it, I guess manually, for lack of a better word. Is that right?
Yeah. So the lymphatic system is always working. It does not have a pump. Like our heart is the pump for the cardiovascular system. The lymphatic system doesn't have a pump like that. So that's why it relies on our movement, because movement acts like a pump. Another huge thing that moves lymph and gets it flowing is diaphragmatic breathing. And those are two great ways to keep lymph flowing and moving. But usually when I get people, they're congested. And so I do a lot of manual techniques to help get that moving. Lymph will always be flowing to some extent or another. It's not like you just stop lymph flow. If the lymph stopped flowing, you would die really quickly. So it's always moving. They recommend rebounding. But again, like when I get people, they're congested, they're compromised. And so I just have specific ways that I work, or that I can teach people how to work on themselves, that open up the lymph nodes in the order that they drain.
Okay, because that was going to be my next question, because like you mentioned one about being on the back of your leg, and I can't even find that one on my leg. So the only one I really know of is I think there's two on your neck, at least two on your neck, maybe more.
Oh, you have a lot in your head and neck. Like a third of the lymph nodes in your body are up there. Most of the time, you're not going to quite feel them. If you feel them, there's typically an infection or something going on. Sometimes they'll feel like marbles. So you have one that's right behind this angle of the jaw. You've got them under your chin. You've got them along that jawline. So sometimes when I go in and work on people, it feels like marbles are under there.
Yeah.
But like the one in the knee, you might feel general swelling, but it's not like you're going to feel that exact lymph node. If you've ever had, let's see, I had food poisoning and it felt like there was gravel deep in my throat, and that was all the swollen lymph nodes.
Oh, wow. So the reason I was asking that, though, you said there's a certain order you do this, and I don't know if, I mean, I'm assuming you have them in your neck, you have them somewhere around your head, your knees. I'm assuming there might be some I don't know if there's any in the arm or torso or anything.
Oh yeah. You have a lot of lymph nodes in your armpit. You've got one by the elbow. You have a ton in your abdomen. Actually, the largest lymph node in the body is in the abdomen. It's called the cisterna chyli. You've got them in your groin, behind your knee, some in your ankle, and so you have lymphatic vessels and capillaries everywhere. Those drain into the lymph nodes, and then the lymph nodes drain into bigger vessels, and then it goes back to the ducts, and then that drains into the subclavian vein behind your collarbone.
Okay. So the reason I was asking that is because like when you work with people like this, it's not like you can just massage their neck and that's it, right? You have to hit every single lymph node all the way down. Is that right? Or whatever order it is?
So I start people out with an assessment, especially if they've had any type of chronic illness. I will start them just working through a few areas of lymph nodes. And some people, you might work through 3 or 5 areas and they have a detox reaction. And that means just stop. The body's already working hard to process something. So let the body do its job, let it get it out. And then sometimes you have to take a while to work with people to get up through that full assessment. Once the body's moving and they're not experiencing a detox reaction, then you can start doing some different lymphatic resets and doing deeper work. But I always take people through an assessment because you never know how their body's going to respond.
So that makes a lot of sense. So 2 questions to that, I guess. When you say a drainage response, what typically is that? And also too, like this isn't something that just somebody's going to do in traffic or anything, right? Like this has to be this isn't something you can do for a couple minutes a day type thing.
Oh, it is.
Sounds like
once people learn the assessment, I teach really quick resets that people can start going through that they can do in less than 2 minutes. Some of them, the more comprehensive stuff that takes a little bit longer, but I teach people stuff they can do in the shower. There's a head and neck reset that I have people do. Just work through a few when you're sitting at a stoplight, like it.
Right.
Just get lymph flowing. But when we talk about detox reactions, that can vary, but sometimes an achiness or pain, a flu-like feeling, dizziness, fatigue, increased anxiety a little bit, maybe a slight worsening of symptoms, and then the body clears it out and it gets better. That can last sometimes a day, sometimes it can last a couple. That's why you just really want to be respectful of how a person's body is responding and just stop if they experience any of that.
Okay. And that makes me think of another big question, and this might not be something that you want to get into, but it sounds like if you do this properly through the whole process or whatever it is, it sounds like it initiates something similar to like an immune system response. So because you said with the flu-like thing, whatever it's filtering out, the body has to fight off, basically is what it's sounding like, or filter out. The body has to filter it out, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's probably not a good idea if somebody already has some sort of illness, a cold or whatever, to do this, right?
Correct. If your body's already fighting something off, if you have a cold or a systemic infection, you don't want to do things to add to that because your body's already working really hard. So wait till you feel better and then you can go at it.
Okay. So this isn't like a what would you call it? This isn't some sort of therapy for a cold or a flu. This is something you do when you're pretty much, already healthy and not sick. Okay.
Yeah, you don't want to add to the burden that your body has to process because that's just stressful. Yeah. Physiologically stressful.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Well, I mean, it's just like people say, you shouldn't work out or whatever if you're feeling ill just because your body's already fighting whatever off.
Right. And if you're already in fight or flight, if your nervous system is in that mode, you're not in the healing and repair. So one of the most important things with anybody I work with is that we do nervous system work consistently in order to help their body get out of fight.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay,
Can you hear
cut
me
out.
now?
Yeah, you cut out for just a second.
Oh no.
Here, let me do this. Let me stop and make another video for whatever reason that you cut out. I want to make sure I get this. Hang on just a second.
Okay.
So I was saying that people say you shouldn't work out or anything if you're sick, if you're already sick.
Right. That's going to increase if you're adding more to your workout or something, that's going to increase the load that the body's trying to already fight off. So if you're sick, if you're not feeling well, you don't need to do lymphatic drainage, or you don't need to go work out, because that's going to be more of a stressor. And one of the most important things in any healing process, whether it's healing from something acute like a cold or the flu, or healing from something that's chronic and long term, is that you need your body out of fight or flight and into that place of restoration and recovery. And that's down at the nervous system level. So the sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. The parasympathetic nervous system is rest, digest, heal, restore. And that's where you access your healing state. If your body's always trying to survive, if it's every single day, day in and day out, is just trying not to die, and it's defending you, you're not going to be in a good place to heal. So we just want to make sure that we do everything for our body that lets it be in that healing and restorative state. And sometimes that's rest. Sometimes it's letting the body do what it's meant to do, flush out whatever illness you're dealing with, and then move forward and do your workouts or do lymphatic work when you're ready.
Man, I really needed to hear this because I'm currently fighting off like a minor cold, but I still feel like I should go to the gym. I still feel like I should go work out. And I don't really, I think it's because the way the gym makes me feel is like, I just feel way better after I come out of the gym. And, but also too, I know that I need to let my body, I need to use the energy reserves for fighting off whatever it is, the cold or whatever. And so I don't know, man, it's really hard for me to, abide by that, because I just feel like I should be I mean, maybe I'll drop it down. Maybe I'll drop down the intensity a little bit, but just still be in there,
I have some people, they make me laugh. Like the moment they stop working out to do recovery, then that's when they get really sick. I have a few people in my life who I was like, you know what, just keep going. Like that's how your body works. It thrives that way.
yeah.
And a lot of people who are already in fitness work really well that way. But in a minor cold will be different than something deeper like the flu or something that's really depleting your system. And we have to be an expert in our own body and our own body's responses. So to an extent, you know how to push yourself. You know how far you can push yourself. Some people need to get in touch with that. So it's really about learning how our body heals and what our bodies need. If you're constantly stressed out all the time, you're not going to be as resilient as somebody who has more margin. Somebody who has more margin is not hitting emergencies on a daily basis at like every 10 minutes and just really in that critical fight or flight state. And ideally for healing, we want to have more of that margin. Like stress is not bad. Stress is good. It's the only way we grow. It's the only way we get stronger. That's what a workout is. It's stress. And your body rises to meet that demand. But sometimes people don't have that resilience and they don't have that margin. Therefore, they need to rest and do a little more restorative work.
Yeah. Well, I think too, the stress thing, I think voluntary stress, like if it's voluntary, that makes a big difference. It's not like these things are happening to you. It's like you're taking these things on. It's like the gym for a lot of people who are like into the gym, or maybe if they're not, the gym is like I don't want to say a battle, but it's like a little mini battle that you face, for 30 or 45, 60 minutes a day, whatever it is. And that's that voluntary stress, I think, is a big difference. But also too, with like the ice bath thing, man, it's like, yes, cold water therapy does help your immune system, but if you're already fighting something off, maybe it's the opposite effect. But it's also a stressor on the body. It's a stressor when you shock your body by getting into cold water. That's why adrenaline, it floods your body with adrenaline, the cold shock proteins, all that kind of stuff. It is a shock on the body. It's a stressor on the body. So I guess you're right. I guess you just have to kind of know your body and know when to take it easy. If you have a fever, it's probably not a good idea to be doing a hard workout or any workout, but also too, in that same breath, you mentioned something earlier about movement with the lymphatic system. And is this, when you say movement, and we're not talking about somebody being sick, we're talking about somebody, if they're just generally, already somewhat healthy. When you say movement, are you talking about just like walking around, like just kind of movement of your body? Or are you saying like I guess maybe a massage type thing of the lymphatic system. When you say movement is good for the lymphatic system, were you talking about just moving your body?
Oh yeah. Whether you go on a walk, whether you jump up and down, whether you stretching, any type of movement is going to help that flow of lymph. Even breathing, that's movement.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I don't think we put as much focus on movement as we should. I think, especially these days, it's very common for a lot of us to have a sedentary lifestyle, and we just kind of like we don't move as often. We certainly don't move as much as we, ancestors did. Living on the plains or whatever it was, and there's just a lot of us that movement is gone. And this is what I try to say too. Like, people talk about your heart and your lungs and your, all that kind of stuff. And that's important. But I think it's just equally as important to take care of your joints, man, because if you get to a point where you can't move around, that lack of movement if you can't move at a certain point in your life, that lack of movement is really going to hurt you. If you can't move around, if you can't walk or, whatever.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Like, one of the first things I look at if I'm working with an older person, very first thing I'm like, can you get out of a chair?
Right.
If I'm doing any type of rehab or if they've been hospitalized, that's the first thing I make sure they can do is stand up, because from there, if you lose your ability to stand and start moving, you're going to decline really quickly.
For sure. And I wonder if, I don't know, I'm not a medical professional, but I wonder if we're looking at this backwards, because we always like try, when a person gets to a point where they have heart issues or whatever, we try to treat the heart. And I wonder if we like treat the joints where a person can move better. I don't know. Would that make a difference? I mean, because like I said, man, if you can't move, like your heart is only going to do so much if you can't move, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. That's really hard when people start getting into those places, because sometimes that's when fluid starts accumulating. So then you have to start looking at lymph. And if people go into any type of heart failure or kidney failure for that matter, that can cause swelling, which is going to back up lymphatic vessels, lymph nodes. But then you're not moving fluid as well. So then it's harder to move and you get more pain because that stuff is not flowing as well. And then that contributes to the load that the heart has to process.
Yeah.
It's just hard. So
that makes sense.
Then,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, identifying what people need to be changing in order to get a healthier heart. And we've really got to be proactive about that. Obviously, we live in a country that's relatively reactive, and then we are thrown on a lot of pills, maybe supplements, but it's a dangerous road. So we've got to start now. I'm 41 and I have 2 kids. So just thinking about like, how do I need to take care of myself to be the best mom and have the longest life possible, and like kick my kid's butt for a while when we're racing. Like, I love running with my kid and chasing him. I want to be able to do that for a really long time.
Right. For sure.
And so what do I need to put into place now to be able to keep up with my kid and have a whole lot of fun with him? Both of them. My other one's 5.5 months, so I'm not chasing him yet, but what do I need to do now? And it's really important to me, especially after having these kiddos. They mean the world to me. And so I want to be able to keep up with them and do every fun thing possible.
I bet, man. And I think movement is like a good start to that. Being able to move. I mean, you have to be able, like, there's no way. I don't think, if you look at any kind of fitness or any kind of just general health, man, movement is like the key thing. I mean, walking, like, I don't know how to phrase this without it sounding disrespectful. I think as a society, we have a big issue with movement, with lack of movement. I'll just say that. There's the lack of movement, and it's crazy. Like, you have to think, like, how many of these other problems exist because of this, but lack of movement is just one thing. I mean, it's lack of sunshine, it's lack of being outside, it's lack of just being out, I mean, I don't see how people do this, like being at home all day, being stuck indoors all day. I would literally go crazy if I was inside all day. Like, I don't see how people do it. But before we move on from the lymphatic system, I wanted to ask you about this just really quick, because we kind of touched on it a little bit, but I mean, I know it's kind of hard to pinpoint this, but like, how many of like general health problems if you had to just guess, just an average like percent, how much of like general health problems that we have are related to this, I guess this lymphatic system, this clogged is that a way to put it? or not
Congested, yeah.
congested? Yeah. I mean, do you
All of
think
them.
all of them? Really?
Every single one of them.
Okay. So a lot of these things that people experience, this could be a simple solution. I don't
Well,
want to say simple,
yeah.
but
This is where a lot of countries, but especially ours, have gone wrong in medical care. Is that we isolate systems and we look at how the heart functions, we look at how the liver functions. We have specialists in all these different areas. We're
Mhm.
not looking at how everything works together, and that's a huge problem because our lymphatic system, even just if I look at the body's drainage pathways, so you have to be having regular bowel movements. You need healthy liver and bile function. The liver, like I said, is what produces like 50% of your lymph. All of this stuff, in conventional medicine, that's a different specialist who looks at those areas.
right.
Most people aren't even looking at lymph, but we have to look at how all of this stuff works together for healing to occur. So, yeah, every single issue that people are facing, there is a lymphatic component.
And this is something that can be prevented or maintained with once you get to that point, a couple minutes a day. It sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many other factors that are going to come in, like the stuff that's going on in our food, in our water, in our air. Those are really, or they can be very toxic factors coming into the body. So overall, we want to be reducing the toxic load that the body has to process,
Hmm.
that's coming into our body. And then also become masters at eliminating the waste and toxins and just keeping our body's drainage pathways open because um, one of the frustrating things, especially with the diet, and they're like, well, just eat like your ancestors. We cannot eat like we could try, but we have GMOs. We have all these pesticides on our
Yep.
foods. We have all sorts of industrial toxins. We don't live in a world like our ancestors did. So therefore, we have to change our strategies to approach the challenges we're facing today so our bodies can be resilient in the face of that. And sure, glyphosate, that's the active ingredient in Roundup, that's everywhere. I mean, it's polluted so much stuff in this country. Other
Hmm.
countries are wising up and getting rid of it, but instead of just being afraid of it and being very reactive, there are lots of things you can do to start detoxing from glyphosate. There are fantastic strategies, but um, reducing the toxic load coming into the body and then facilitating drainage. So part of that involves lymphatic drainage, and yeah, I teach people how to do that and they can do it quickly. I'm not going to tell everyone that, oh, if you do lymphatic drainage for 2 minutes a day, all your problems are going to go away. There are a lot more factors to it, but
Right.
this is a huge component and we never think about it. And we even have, so we have the lymphatic system that's in the entire body, but we have a very specific part of the lymphatic system. It's called the glymphatic system, which is just for the brain. That's your central nervous system. So your brain and spinal cord. The glymphatic system is the central nervous system's dedicated waste removal system, and that's most active when we sleep. So if we're getting that high quality restorative sleep, that's when our brain is clearing itself. That's when your brain gets healthier. You get the waste and toxins out of there. And whether you're dealing with brain fog or Alzheimer's or a neurological issue, all of these things are going to be connected to how the glymphatic system is draining. The glymphatic system drains into the lymphatic system, and that's how all of this stuff is getting out from that cellular level. And then it goes to the liver, and then the liver sends it out of the body. So we just have to look at how it's all connected and start helping to work with our body and not look at everything in isolation.
Okay. There's a lot there to unpack, and I have a lot to say about all that. The first thing, I guess this is a good way to transition into the diet, to this whole diet thing. Uh yeah, man. So if I don't know if you know, if you just like go to Google and you just Google a list of ingredients from something from like from Europe or some other part of the world versus what's in American food, it's like the ingredient list is like cut in half. And when you look at a bottle, like just take a bottle of water. A bottle of water is not supposed to have a list of ingredients in it. I mean, like the water itself, like if you have like spring water or something like natural, it already has things in it that you need. I understand that it needs to be filtered, it needs to be, purified and all that kind of stuff, but there's not supposed to be a list of ingredients on water, man. On bottled water. And that's bottled water, like tap water. If you're drinking tap water these days, if you don't have a very very competent filter on that thing, there's probably there's probably 50 plus contaminants that are in that tap water, if you were to test it.
You know what's gross? Okay. So I know that people will argue with me on this, but I drink distilled water.
Hmm.
Part of that is because our water sources are so gross. So I have a distiller at home. I'll
Hmm.
put tap water in it, and the distiller makes it into steam and then drips it into another container. So you're getting rid of those heavy metals. You're getting rid of a lot of glyphosate, those microplastics, a ton of stuff. I can run even just one cycle through that distiller, and the residue that's on the bottom when that cycle is finished is gross.
Hmm.
If I run 3 cycles, there's stuff chipping off the bottom of the distiller. It's
Oh, wow.
disgusting.
Do you
So,
use, like, you just pour tap water in there, or do you use some other kind of water?
no, I'll put tap water in the distiller,
Oh, yeah.
and then you also like, as the way mine is set up, you have a charcoal filter that the water drips through.
Right.
So that's getting a couple more things, but the distiller is going to get out a lot of the junk that's in our water.
Hmm.
But it's gross when I look at the bottom.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not that it's ideal. Like, we want to have minerals in our water and all of that, but that's not realistic unless you're from this pure glacier up in the mountains. We're not getting that. So the one of the best ways to help the health of our body is hydrating with clean water. And unfortunately, we have to take a couple additional steps to get that healthy, purer water so that
Yeah.
our body can heal. Like, that's the pure water is one of the best ways to start detoxing. That's going to help get all this stuff out of our system. Our lymph is made up mostly of water. So we have to have all of that working, and it does start with water.
Yeah. And even if you can buy like a very clean, pure water, like bottled water, it's still bottled. You still have the plastic.
Mhm.
Plastics are a whole other thing.
Yeah,
That
Europe, they don't do that. They have glass bottles a lot more
did
than we do.
I didn't know that. I
Neither
wish
did
we
I until I was talking with somebody the other day, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't have all that plastic. There's some, but not as much to the extent that America has."
Man, I wish, because like I could go down a rabbit hole in this. Plastic is like, the effects from plastic, man, is so bad. And everything, almost all of our food sources are stored in some sort of plastic. If it's not tin or aluminum or whatever it is, which can't be healthy, it's plastic, or there's very little glass. I mean, I don't think there's anything. Well, there's a little bit of glass, but most of it's plastic. There's a lot of plastic. There's a lot of plastic. And just going back to the ingredients for a second, yeah, like Europe and all these other places, they don't have the ingredients like you mentioned glyphosate. I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast a while back. I don't know if you know who Gary Brecka is. He's a biologist. He's getting a lot of traction on social media right now. Some good,
Mhm.
some bad. Some people agree, some people don't. But anyways, they were talking about, if you go to Italy and you eat like pasta, like here in America, if you eat pasta, most people, if they have a big bowl of pasta, they might feel very lazy or lethargic or whatever afterwards. They were like, if you go to Italy, it's not like that. Or if you go somewhere like that, it's not like that if you eat pasta, because it's not treated with glyphosate. The rye or the wheat or whatever it is that makes the pasta is not treated with the glyphosate. And there's also speculation too that, like, people have celiac disease, the gluten sensitivity, and there's speculation that what that is an oversensitivity to glyphosate itself. It's not about the pasta; it's the glyphosates that are being sprayed on this stuff before we eat it.
One of the things glyphosate does is disrupt the gut lining. And so if you've heard of leaky gut, or
Hmm.
a ton of the like celiac and all of that, that's because glyphosate is messing with the gut lining. So if you've heard of tight junctions and gap junctions, that's what lets certain things through and what keeps other things from going through into the bloodstream. So when you hear about leaky gut, that means those things aren't functioning well. Glyphosate is affecting those things. So now we're more sensitive to stuff like lectins, which are beans and legumes and grains. It might not necessarily be the food, it's the glyphosate on them that's disrupting gut function to allow those things to be a little bit more harmful. I know that chickpeas, they're all popular now because they make chickpea pasta and chickpea flour and hummus, all of this stuff. But chickpeas are highly treated with glyphosate. And one of the uses of glyphosate is to increase production so you get more.
Hmm.
Chickpea popularity, I mean, it's gone up a bunch in just the past few years. I think since 2015, maybe I forget the exact percentage that production has increased, but chickpeas are highly treated with glyphosate. So it might not be the chickpea that's the problem, but the glyphosate on it. And obviously, big companies are going to cut corners. They want more stuff to make more money. So yeah, let's put glyphosate on it and get more. And we don't care how people hurt because we're just making more money. Yeah,
But
glyphosate's nasty.
but if you look at that though, like all of this food is manufactured. Like if you look at it on a mass scale, if you look at it from a bird's eye view, it's like if you're spraying this stuff on crops, or if you're, you know, pumping animals full of antibiotics because they can't process the feed they're being given to eat, or, you know, whether it's the steroids or whatever it is they're putting in these animals to make them like 3 times their normal size. Like this is manufactured food. This is not natural food. Like you mentioned, like eat like your ancestors. Unless we go out and like just hunt game animals, you know, and basically source our own water, we can't do that. If you go to a, like, even I don't want to say this because I don't know, but it's, even if you go to like a organic food place that sells organic food, there's still no guarantee this stuff hasn't touched it.
Well, and also the food might be grown organically, but the water they're using to water it can still be contaminated with glyphosate. Like 75% of our water sources are contaminated with it. So, it might be organically grown by the label, but the water used on it was contaminated. So we're in a different day and age, and we have to be mindful of that and then guard ourselves appropriately and therefore our food sources. But even like tomatoes, they're not in the store, they're not necessarily ripe. They haven't gone through the full process to harvest. They get gas sprayed on them to make them red. Our tomatoes have been green. We have to keep them longer to transport them further distances. And so then we spray them with gas to make them red. I can't eat tomatoes or tomato-based things just out of the store. They make me really sick. But when I have a tomato from my dad's garden that is able to go through its full cycle and then be harvested at the right time, I feel great. I have no problems.
How long, when you get a vegetable out of his garden or whatever, how long is it before it's like, what's the shelf life basically? Would you say like just the, you know, from your dad's garden, that tomato, what's the shelf life? Like what, a week?
It depends. Sometimes they'll take a little bit longer to ripen up, but once they're ripe, they go bad really quickly. So I eat them
Yeah.
really soon, or my son goes and harvests them. Like the sweet potatoes that he grows, they'll last a little bit longer, or a lot longer, I should say. But yeah, the tomatoes and peppers, they go bad pretty quickly. So but what we do is pick them and then eat them that night.
Yeah. But this stuff in the store though, it probably takes a week to get trucked to wherever the supermarket is or whatever, you know. And so that's the connection I was making there.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. This whole diet thing, that leads us into supplements though, because I feel like if the food is chemically treated, and first of all, it's not healthy to eat the food, then it's also too, it doesn't have nearly the nutrients that it should, you know. And so it's almost like you have to supplement with supplements, but then then it's like, well, where are the supplements from? Like what's the source of the supplements? Like are the supplements or the vitamins or whatever, is that a natural source? And so it's like this this feels like a Truman Show, man. Like this is like, I feel like this is like a show. It's not funny, but it kind of is like funny. I feel like it's a show, and like just somebody's going to jump out with a camera and be like, "Hey, got you," because it's like it just feels like fake. It just feels like a stage. I mean, because this stuff that we're eating is not food, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I'm waiting for somebody to come out and say that they were messing with us.
I mean, I don't know another explanation for it. And the people just do not question this. Like they don't question that we have this whole. We have things on the labels, the ingredients that we can't even pronounce. That doesn't sound safe at all. You know, I don't know if this is actual ingredient. I'm just making up a name, like hydrochloride or whatever it is that's on the, like that does not sound something you should put in your body. You know, there's and also too. there are, when it comes to vitamins and supplements, there are certain vitamins and supplements that are cyanide based. Like there's certain forms of B12 that are cyanide based. And the argument is that the dosage is not enough to cause a reaction, which is how this stuff is like judged. Like whether or not it causes a reaction, okay, yes or no, that means it's toxic or not. But like it's cyanide based. And you can go to Joe Rogan and Gary Brecka did this on his website. You can go to the CDC's website and look at the effects of what this thing is. But anyway, and so then the question is like, well, okay, yes, we need to supplement with vitamins and supplements, but then like, where do the vitamins and supplements come from? Like, is that also something that's not natural, that's not manufactured? I mean, or that is manufactured?
It
It's just like,
depends where you're getting them from.
yeah.
Some of the great supplements for certain purposes are fulvic and humic acid based. And so that's coming out of the ground from plant and animal materials that are decomposing. But like if you just want a real general thing, is this supplement company good? Read the label. If they have maltodextrin in it, that's a filler. It's a cheap filler. They're going to say it's okay, but they're cutting costs if you see that on the label. And just like we have to read the food labels, we have to read supplement labels and know what they mean. Soy protein isolate. I don't like soy to begin with, but soy protein isolate, that's not a super healthy thing. Like it's processed with hexane, so that like you're already adding more chemicals to your food that your body has to process. Soy, that's and then soy, how it's grown, that's still a lot of glyphosate, all of this. So we have to look at that. I know soy protein isolate is in a lot of stuff, especially diet products. But when I look at supplements, I'm looking at them in a bigger context. So yeah, our soils and everything they've been depleted. So we need to remineralize. Minerals are the components of everything in our body. It's all the reactions that we rely on and our structure. These are all mineral based. So our soils have been depleted. Our foods are obviously depleted. So replenishing with that, because in order for the body to heal, in order to have a strong immune system, anything, we need the energy and the mineral support to be able to do that. Like detoxification, and I'm talking about like the 3 stages of liver detoxification, that requires a lot of energy. Our drainage requires energy, and we're so depleted. So we have to be very intentional in the supplements that we choose, that number one, that we're not adding to the toxic load our body has to process, but that we're really using a strategic approach and not just throwing supplements haphazardly. We really want to put them into a framework for our different needs and goals.
Yeah. You mentioned soy. Like I stay as far away from soy as possible, and that includes soy sauce, because soy is like it ruins testosterone levels, man. If you're a person who keeps track of that kind of stuff, it will plummet your testosterone levels. But you mentioned the chemicals. There is a soybean processing plant about 2 or 3 miles from my house, and about 2 weeks ago, they had a fire in the facility, and they called in. There was apparently there was a hexane hazard was there, and so treating the fire was like one thing, but having it not spread to the hexane container or whatever it was, that was a whole separate thing. So they called in I think it was 6 different fire stations from different little towns or whatever, because they had to not let it, because they said if the hexane container were to catch on fire, it would level like a square mile, around this place. And so that just goes to prove your point that this hexane is not, whatever it is volatile or is explosive, to the point of gasoline apparently. And I don't know the process, I don't know how they use it, whatever. I just know it was a hazard. Fighting the fire was one thing, but having it not spread to this particular part was a whole separate, because it was like a bomb there basically. So yeah, I mean, however the soy is processed, however that is, there's definitely some chemicals that go into that. You mentioned something else too that I wanted to hit on. I can't remember what it was. I have a notepad right here, and I've been jotting down some notes as you're talking. So if you see me writing, that's what I'm doing. I don't want you to think I'm not paying attention, but I don't want to interrupt you, and I also don't want to lose my train of thought because I want to come back to the question. But I forget what it was. But yeah, the soy isolate. I mean, I think that's got to be the reason for that has to be like cheap calories. It has to be just like a filler for the food, because if we're eating something that has 100 calories or 500 calories, I mean, yeah, you need that. That's good, but like, what's the sort? Like, what are those calories composed? Like, what is it? If you go to a fast food place and you get a meal that's 1,500 calories, or if you get 1,500 calories spread over 2 or 3 meals out of the day, like the source matters. Like
Mm-hmm.
what are those calories made of? And
Trash.
yeah, it's not, man,
Well,
it's not
even
healthy.
like keto is popular right now, but if you look at any keto product on the market for the most part, it's got garbage ingredients. So I'm like, well,
Mhm.
no wonder people are having bad reactions to keto stuff because they're eating the keto bars and keto shakes, all these keto treats. The labels are garbage. It's absolute trash in that food. So if it says keto on it, run. And then
But
everybody, like I know Medifast is a popular one that people use because they're busy, and Medifast makes the pre-made shakes and pre-made protein bars. And
mhm.
people like that one because it's convenient, but it's terrible ingredients. And then most of those protein bars and shakes have artificial sugars in them.
Yeah,
They're awful. The diet industry, well, I have my opinions, but it's useless.
yeah, the
Like,
artificial
give people
sugars
real
are
food and watch their bodies heal, and give them
right.
real fats, good fats, and let their body heal.
Yeah. See, and that's another thing too, man. We've been told like for however long that saturated fat was a bad thing, that fats were a bad thing. I mean, anything is a bad thing in excess, but if you look at the standard like American breakfast, like what a breakfast is recommended to be, it's like mostly sugar, and people don't realize how bad sugar is. I think like sugar is one of the things that gets off easy because it's like people just, oh well, it's bad for your teeth, whatever, but they don't understand like the effects that sugar has on your body, man. If you look at a person who like doesn't consume sugar at all and they look like 15 years younger than what they are, like that should be a wake up call. That should show you like what the effects of how bad sugar actually is.
That and good fats versus bad fats. So like those rancid seed oils and processed vegetable oils,
Mm-hmm.
those will age people really quickly.
I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, those vegetable oils and seed oils are garbage. Just getting those. One of the things they do is make your cell walls like rigid, so the cells can't get nutrients and oxygen in very well, and they can't get waste and toxins out. So you just have this nasty accumulation. And um, one of the coolest things you can do for your health and for your body is getting good fats in there. And whether that's beef tallow, that's a really high quality one. If it's grass fed, grass finished, same thing for butter. You can get ghee. Like those are very healing fats. And
Mm-hmm.
you can notice great differences in a relatively short amount of time. Some people have a compromised digestive system, and specifically like that liver and bile and gallbladder area where they're so compromised that even if they eat healthy fats, they can't process them very well.
Right.
And so that's going to take an adjustment period for them to start adapting to healthier fats. But oh, if you ever look on YouTube and look up videos of how they process seed and vegetable oils, it's gross. They use all these bleaches and deodorizers, and
Hmm.
like your grapeseed oil, that's not grapes. It's a disgusting process. So, and then even like that canola oil, that is sneaking into olive oil. So if you don't source your olive oil or your avocado oil well, you're getting garbage ingredients. They're putting canola and rancid seed oils, and then they're putting in your flavorings and food colorings to make it look nice.
Yeah, and then there's the enriched bleach flour or whatever it is, all that kind of stuff. You know what's crazy, man? I was uh I was on vacation over the summer, and we had an Uber driver, and he was from, I think it was Jamaica or somewhere like that. And we were talking this, somehow this conversation came up. We were talking to him, and we were like, man, when we think of another country, like the food we think of is this. We think of, whatever the food is for this country. We're just curious, like, what do people think of American food? Like, what if you're in another place and there's like an American restaurant, like, what is that? And he was like, oh, McDonald's or whatever. I was like, oh my God, dude, McDonald's is like the American food overseas. Like, that's what people have as burgers and fries. Like, is that how we represent our diet? Like, internationally, is with a fast food, basically.
Yep.
I was honestly thinking something like, a steak or some chicken, barbecue chicken or something like that. It's like, no, McDonald's is like that's like the American kiosk or whatever in the mall in Asia or wherever it is. I mean, it's like, I'm like, dude, I mean, it's not funny. It's not funny, but it is kind of funny. It makes sense, man. But it's like, and when you say things like this, people want to get irritated because they're like, oh, well, you're not proud of your country. We're like, yeah, I am proud of my country. That's why I'm saying this, because we should we should be more aware of what we are with what we are putting into our body, especially when we look at how the rest of the world is doing this, man. If we go to Europe, I don't drink soda. I haven't drank soda in years, but if we go to Europe and we buy soda in America, first of all, the soda itself is a whole different issue. There's the corn syrup and all that kind of stuff. But when the ingredient list is half of what it is in America and Europe, or we look at something like, we can even take this to another level that's not diet, man. In most other countries, people speak a minimum of 2 languages. And like here, people barely speak 1 language. And it's like, bro, like, I understand English is like a pretty common language. It's supposed to be a lot of countries speak English, and I get that, but it's like, are we really that educated? Because I can go somewhere else right now, and there's a good chance those people speak more than 1 language. Actually, they can probably communicate with me if I go to their country, but I can't communicate with them if they come to my country. So really, where's the flaw in the education system here? But it's like, when you say that, people get offended. They get mad. It's like, oh, well, you're not patriotic. No, I am patriotic. And the reason I'm saying this is because we're not up to par with the world's education system here.
Not even close. Not even close. I get real concerned about that for my kids. So it's like, how do I make intentional decisions about their education, and whether that means at some point getting them out of the country so they can get a different view on things, but having a valuable skill set that's valuable in the marketplace. I don't think our education system's doing a whole lot of that in comparison to other countries. It's failing.
A big thing that I have, and I know and it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, but I think one of the problems a big problem we have with our education system, is it pushes like college so bad. And like, let's just be honest here, a lot of people are not like, they're not made for that space. They're not going to excel in that space. Like, when I was in high school, and it could be different today, but when I was in high school, there was no talk of like there was barely any talk of trades or anything that was outside of a university. Like, basically, if you didn't go to a university, you felt like you were not pursuing a good enough career or education or whatever. And the problem with that is, a lot of those people that went to university unknowingly put themselves in debt for a career that they didn't even want, because that's what they thought they were supposed to do. And then these people went into trades, or they started businesses. Tangent, side note, you are taught nothing about business, nothing about starting a business, about owning a business. Entrepreneurship is not pushed, at least in the education system I was in, was not pushed. It was either university or a little bit of trades, but that was it. Anyways,
go ahead.
I should probably stop right there.
I failed my college major. I was an education major. I was 18 years old, pushed into college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. My mom was a teacher, so I became a teacher. Or I should say, I went on the path to become a teacher, and I was student teaching in my senior year, and they came in to observe, and they're like, you're really bad at this. We're not going to pass you. And I said, you kidding me? I've just paid for 4 years of a private school education. You're going to fail me? They're like, yeah, you're really bad. And they did not back down. I had to switch my major to something else. I graduated on time, but I had no career path coming out. Like, I didn't have any certification, and I was really lost. That got me on the path I'm on today. I went back to a trade school. That is a massage school. Massage is a trade. That has opened up my entire life. I've had incredible opportunities because of that failure in my college. But I've had amazing networking opportunities. I've studied under some of the finest people in the world for this type of work that
Hmm.
have opened the door for me to work on professional athletes, Olympic athletes, just get a lot of education in that athletic realm. And it has made my practice what it is today. And that was going to a trade school and getting my hands on something. And I've had a very successful business because of that. And I'm grateful every day for that. I'll call it a divine redirection.
Right.
I was pretty ticked off when they're having this conversation with me in the moment about failing school, but I had to send those people thank you notes years later because my career has been such a blessing, and I've been able to learn so much and help so many different people. I can't imagine my life without it. I would be miserable if I was still teaching. I probably still wouldn't be teaching and looking for something else to do. But now, 16 years later, I can look back and I'm very, very thankful for that redirection and for the ability to go to a trade school and to study under people. And one of the huge things that's been important for me along this whole career is the proper mentors. And that means mentors in my content area, so the stuff that I actually do for work, but also mentors in business, because you're right, they don't teach that stuff in school. And so I've learned amazing things about business. If there's one thing I could tell people to do is it get the capabilities to own your own business. That opens up so many doors. Heck, just for tax write-offs. I mean, like
Hmm.
there's so many cool things I've been able to do with a business, and things I've been able to learn, opportunities I've had. I love owning a business.
Yeah. But of course, for that, to do that, you also need to know about finance and taxes, which they also don't teach. But,
Oh,
you know,
not a thing. I've learned everything on the fly.
yeah, I'll say this, and I'll stop attacking the education system. It's like they look for a person to fill in to the education system and not for an education to fit the person. Like they're trying to. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a numbers thing. I don't know, but it's clearly that most people are not just simply not cut out, for lack of a better word, for college. You know, um,
And there's nothing wrong with that.
there's nothing wrong with
It's
that. No.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're wonderful trade. The most successful people I know, well, a lot of them, they own businesses that come from a trade. And right now they're having problems finding employees for their business because there are
Yep.
not enough people skilled in a trade to be able to support that. And maybe not
Yeah.
enough
Well,
people who want to work, but that's a different
I was gonna
story.
say that's a whole other conversation right there, man. Um, Listen, let me stop this video really quickly. I'm gonna take a quick break right here. Um, and we'll be right back. Okay. So I wanted to pick up on sleep because we were talking. You mentioned something about sleep, and I don't think that's something that gets the attention that it should. So do you have any ideas on like improving sleep or the importance of sleep or anything?
That could be a really long conversation. Um, one of the things, like we know we need to be getting 7 to 9 hours of high quality restorative sleep. Like
Hmm.
we all get that, but sometimes, especially for me, I'm dealing with people who have a variety of chronic health issues, and typically, when you have a chronic health issue, it's going to accompany or be accompanied by chronic sleep issues. So just to tell somebody, well, you need to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, that's anxiety producing because they might be lying in bed awake, trying to sleep, and they can't.
Hmm.
Some of that is if somebody has hormones off, that can really impact that. But another quick thing we can do, just the lighting. So I know a lot of people are probably using, like they're watching TV late at night, or they're trying to fall asleep with their phone on. That is going to mess with the melatonin production. Melatonin
Yep.
is one of the things that helps us sleep. Our bodies produce melatonin naturally, so and that can decrease as we age. But the other thing that impacts that is too much light.
Hmm.
Um, and then as the morning comes up and as light increases, that's when the melatonin production increases and we're ready to wake up. So just regulating the lighting in your home, um, for me, I can feel a huge stress. Like if it's nighttime and I walk into a very bright room, I can
Yep.
actually feel that impact on my nervous system now. It's like, wow, this is not calm. This is wiring me. This is hard. Um, So if you can, I have under cabinet lighting, and that's what I turn on at night. If I have to walk out in the kitchen or something, or even in the morning, rather than blasting yourself with all these bright overhead lights, just turn on lights gradually, or even watch the sunrise as you wake up. I get up really, really early to have quiet and work on my business. So I get up at 4 a.m. So I get to watch the sunrise, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to do that, but just increase that light gradually. And that's one thing that can make a subtle but significant impact on your sleep cycles over time. And then one that's really in my wheelhouse that I work with a lot of people on is mouth breathing. So if we are mouth breathing, and that a lot of times if you're snoring or you're struggling with sleep apnea, even if you're waking up still tired and irritable, you have to look at how you're breathing. And if you're breathing through your mouth at night, you're automatically putting your body into that fight or flight cycle. So again, talking about the nervous system, if you're in fight or flight, you're not going to sleep as well. So there are structural components that you have to look at. Like, are you physically capable of getting enough air? So if somebody has a deviated septum, if they have polyps or anything in their nose, somebody had a bone spur one time. I don't know how they got a bone spur there, but narrow nasal passages, sometimes that will make breathing very difficult. So you mouth breathe to supplement that. You really want to go see an ENT, the ear, nose, and throat specialist, to get that resolved so you can start getting better sleep, because this is the foundation of everything we need for health.
Exactly.
But one of the other things, and this is my jam, I love doing this stuff. The tongue should be pressing up into the roof of our mouth, not just the tip of the tongue on the hard palate, but the entire surface of your tongue should be pressing up into your mouth. One of the keys for that is some of the cranial nerves, specifically the vagus nerve, is running through that soft palate. It connects in there. The vagus nerve is one of the most important nerves to help regulate your body's response to stress. It also helps manage the inflammatory response. So if our tongue is resting on the bottom of our mouths, which a lot of people have that happening, we are not stimulating the vagus nerve at that really important point where it's coming out very close to the brain. So proper tongue position is key to helping regulate the stress response. Another thing that can prevent the tongue from being in the proper position is if the tongue is congested with lymph. One of the ways you can notice that, if you're having trouble breathing, if your tongue feels swollen, but if you can see your teeth marks on your tongue, that means your tongue is probably backed up with lymph, and we need to clear that out. So I started having people do tongue exercises, one, to increase that mobility, so you get a little bit of a stretch in there so the tongue can move. And then you have to follow the path that the lymph drains to get the tongue to clear. So if I'm just working on the tongue with people, I work clearing above the collarbone, behind the angle of the jaw, because that's where you need to clear lymph nodes in order to start opening up that path. And then you work under the chin and along the jawline. And then I'll work deep cervical lymph nodes that are kind of next to your throat. But you start opening all of that up, you clear the path for lymph to drain, and then you start draining the tongue, because your tongue drains into the submental, which is your chin, and submandibular lymph nodes. Mandible is your jaw. So the lymph nodes that are under your jaw, that's where your tongue lymph drains into. And then the very middle of your tongue drains into the deep cervical lymph nodes. But you have to make sure all of that is open so that your tongue isn't swollen, so that it can get up in the proper position. If your tongue is resting on the bottom of your mouth, you're going to be mouth breathing more than likely. And that is going to impact your sleep. You won't get that deep restorative sleep if you're mouth breathing. So ideally, you want to be nasal breathing with your tongue pressed up into the roof of your mouth as much as possible, but especially at night. So one of the ways, as long as you don't have a structural obstruction, is to just put a piece of tape over your mouth. Don't use like athletic tape. That one's kind of rough. I use Nextcare gentle paper tape. I know they have mouth taping strips. That's popular. They're super expensive, and the adhesive, at least for me, I know a lot of people love them, but the adhesive is pretty strong. It gives me a panic attack. I hate putting that tape on. So I just use a strip that goes across the middle of my lips up and down. And if I have to sneeze or something, I can get it off really quickly. It's not stuck on there hard. That's one thing I don't like about the sleep strips. They're hard to get off if you have to sneeze in the middle of the night. So I use that, and I tell lots of people to use that. It's phenomenal. And one of the reasons, there are a lot of root cause reasons that people get sinus issues, but one thing is that mouth breathing, you're not filtering stuff properly, you're getting dehydrated, and you're irritating the breathing passages, including the nasal passages. That's going to create excess mucus production in the nasal passages. Therefore, you're not going to be able to nasal breathe. So we have to start breathing through our nose in order to break that cycle of inflammation and mucus production so we can start breathing properly. That's my long-winded answer about sleep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I got a couple things I want to touch on. Yeah, the mouth breathing, man. I think that's called mewing when you lift the tongue to the top of your mouth. I think this is what people are talking about when they do this. But the reason people do it, why it got so popular, is because it can change your jaw, the shape of your face. It can basically give you a more defined jawline.
Right, your tongue's going to press up and press out that hard palate, so you can so your facial bones develop right.
So people do it just to look better, but it sounds like there's a positive health benefit to it. Another thing too, man, you were mentioning mouth breathing. So have we talked about Andrew Huberman before? Do you know who that is?
I do. I think we talked about him the last time we spoke.
Yeah. So he's a neuroscientist professor at Stanford, and he's got a podcast. I learned this from his podcast. People think that like when it's cold, that people do get sicker easily when it's cold, and they get colds up more often when it's cold. But he was saying that one of the reasons for that is it's not necessarily that the viruses are more active. It's because the cold air outside or the heat inside dries out your nasal passages, and so it makes it more easier for like viruses and bacteria and stuff to pass through there. And so, but he was saying that the nose is it filters a lot of that stuff out if you breathe. If you're just outside or inside and you breathe in something, the nose does a lot of filtering. So if you breathe through your mouth, it doesn't filter the natural way that it's supposed to. So that's a good point about nasal breathing.
And it doesn't warm the air up either.
Right. Yeah. And then you mentioned, so I want to go all the way back to the light. I thought that I was the only person that did that. Like, because before I go to sleep, man, I try to not have like bright lights on for at least 30 minutes. And I know that might not be enough time, but at least 30 minutes before I go to bed, sometimes an hour if I can. I'll just have as little light as possible that I need to brush my teeth or whatever else. And because you're right, it does kind of suppress that melatonin, production if you have the bright lights. And then you mentioned too about the sunlight in the morning. Man, the low angle sunlight is like very different from you only have about 30 minutes or so before it gets to where it's like really, really bright, and it just gets brighter as the day goes on. But that first, 30 minutes or so, it's like when the sun is the low level, like that can help set your circadian rhythms. And it helps with so many things. I can't tell you how much I love the ice bath sunlight combo when I'm in the ice bath, the cold plunge, and I don't look directly at the sun, but you just look in the direction of the sun. You had the sunlight hit your eyes, and it's that early morning sun. Man, that's like the first time I ever did that, it was like a sustained energy throughout the day. It wasn't like a coffee or a caffeine energy type thing. There was like no crash up and down type thing. It was just, I remember when I first did that, man, I was so productive that entire day. It was just like, I told a friend of mine, he does cold plunges too. And I was like, this will give you a Greek god like energy level if you do this. I mean, it's just that combo of that early morning sunlight and the ice bath. And, anyway, but yeah, that early morning sunlight is I try to do that every morning. If sometimes it's cloudy or whatever, and even if you're outside, it's still going to be brighter than a bright light inside. But that's something else I learned from Andrew Huberman from his podcast. He was talking about the light exposure, And it's like when the sun is low like that, I know right now where we're at this time of year is cold, but if you could have that hit your skin, if you can have that low level light hit your skin, it's like your body absorbs that differently than it does if it's like very, very high and the UV index or whatever it is high, and it's got a potential to burn your skin. But that early morning sunlight is everything. But anyways, to tie that into sleep, it helps your circadian rhythms when because I know people who they have the blackout curtains on their windows, in their bedroom or whatever. And I'm like, man, I could not do that. Like I could not, I just couldn't do that. Like that sunlight, I'm usually up before the sun comes up anyways, like barely before the sun comes up, not like you are, not like 4 a.m. But yeah, man, that first little dose of sunlight, that's everything in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
And you to go back to supplements for a minute, talking about melatonin. I didn't know this, but the melatonin and supplements that people take, like to help with sleep or whatever, is like way higher than what the body would ever naturally produce. And I don't know if you know this or not. I learned this also from Huberman, that melatonin, like children have very high melatonin levels, and one of the things it does is it suppresses puberty. And so, like when these parents give their children like high doses of melatonin, Huberman was talking about how he's concerned about that because it might prolong. How did he say it? Prolong the basically push puberty out if it's done over a long period of time. But also too, with people who take melatonin, a common problem I hear is that like it helps them fall asleep, but they don't stay asleep.
Yep.
And so yeah. But to close off that, I know I was kind of jumping around a little bit there. To close that off, I think sleep is like the foundation for everything, man. Because if you're gonna work out or try to get to a fitness plan or whatever, people want to start with like, oh well, how much should I eat? What's the protein level? What should I do in the gym? My biggest thing is going to tell them like, how is your sleep? Like, how are you sleeping? Because like the sleep is when your body repairs itself. You refresh yourself, you repair. Food is important, but if you've ever done any kind of fasting or anything like that, you can go longer without food than you can without sleep.
Yep.
I mean, sleep is just it does not get the attention that it needs, man, because people. I used to be like this. I'd say, well, I get 5 hours and I'm good. But it's so much better when you get whatever works for your body. And you were talking about, telling people they have to sleep this amount of time, but I think it's different for everybody, because I'm good if I get like between 6.5 and 7 hours. That's optimal for me. Anything over like 7.5, I feel just as bad if I sleep less than 6. So, but I mean, so every person has, I would say 7 is probably a magic number for me, 7 hours. And I mean, everybody has their own thing that I guess they just have to figure out what works best for them.
Yeah. And one other thing along those lines, people might think I'm putting a tinfoil hat on right now. If you unplug your Wi-Fi routers at night or unplug smart TVs that are in your bedroom, if you have a sleep number bed, unplug that so you're not getting all those volts and just currents coming through your body. Those are things we might not think about, but that can really impact our ability to sleep well and therefore our ability to heal. And sometimes if people don't have a lot of energy, if they're very compromised, if their immune systems are compromised, if they are just weak and having trouble healing, we have to do outside things in order to take the load off the body that it's processing, and do that by unplugging the sleep number beds are terrible. But unplug that stuff, unplug your Wi-Fi routers, and that just creates a little more margin for people to be able to heal. And sometimes that's what they need to get better sleep.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that makes me think of another question. What do you think about grounding? Like, walking outside with, no shoes or whatever, just kind of like that contact with the earth. Because you mentioned the currents in your body, and supposedly grounding is supposed to reset your natural current. If you walk basically with no shoes on the ground.
If I could go walk on the beach every single day, like I feel so much better when I do that.
Mhm.
Just that contact with the sand and something real. I love it. I feel a huge difference. Um, and I also think about the structural benefits of walking barefoot as well. Like that's how my brain works. That's how I think of stuff. Like how does we put our feet in shoes all day and then we get all these foot problems because we have weak feet. So if you can be on the ground and you're grounding and also using your foot muscles, that's going to impact your health so much. It's phenomenal.
Well, they make mats, like these little covers that go over your mattress that you're like, I guess you plug in or whatever. It's a PEMF mat, I think, and it's supposed to mimic grounding. So if there was ever a situation, I guess if maybe somebody lives in a populated city where there's a lot of concrete or something, but if there, for whatever reason you can't ground with your shoes off, they make these mats that go over your mattress, and they're supposed to, mimic that whatever it is that the grounding does. I think it uh, takes. I don't know. I can't explain it scientifically, but I know it separates your. It's supposed to like separate and stabilize your your cells if you ground
Electrons.
properly. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it would take the current out of your body. I mean, that's what would make sense to me, because if you ground something, if you ground an electrical wire or something, it takes the current, like, grounds it out.
I've heard mixed reviews on those things. I don't have one, so I can't tell you accurately from my personal experience. Some people, because they find it stressful to their system, like that's going to be interpreted differently, but some people feel more stressed out when they use them, and other people feel grounded and feel very good. So again, just like the number of hours you get for sleep, those mats, everybody's going to have a personal preference. But I have not used them, so I can't give any personal recommendations for that.
Yeah. What also
I just go
sounds like,
walk on the beach.
yeah, yeah. Well, nothing's going to compare to that, man. Nothing's going to compare to being outside, walking on the actual ground. But I don't know. It sounds kind of excessive to lay on that thing for 7 or 8 hours a night, you know, when you could walk outside for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and that probably does the job. I don't know. I guess those, I don't know how they work, but I guess the way they do work is they're only on a couple hours, like the first couple hours of sleep. Because I can't imagine that thing being on all night, and just kind of, I don't know though.
Yeah, it wouldn't be my favorite idea to be sleeping on, but it's interesting because I really try to do all this stuff with my kids. So my 3-year-old is an early riser, and he loves watching the sun come up.
Mhm.
He he calls it watching the sun wake up. And so he'll sit out with me and we hang out, watch the sun come up. I try to take him to the beach or outdoor stuff as much as possible. My other little guy's only 5.5 months, but wherever he can participate, I try to get him there. So watching the sunlight, making sure he's getting outside. And I can tell a huge difference in their behavior just when they get that outside time. And it's fun because there's no placebo effect with kids. They don't know what's going on. You
Right.
just see how their little systems respond. They don't know any of the scientific studies. They don't know anything fancy. They just know how their body responds when they're in nature. And my kids are more calm. Their behavior is far better. And just very simple things like that light exposure and running around barefoot. It's key.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because that's the way, like for however long before we had clocks or whatever, it had to be that the sun was how we naturally woke up. Like the light, the presence of the sun or the absence of the sun had to tell us like whether we were awake or not, because that's what the circadian rhythm is. I mean, I don't know. I'm just speculating, but also too, like with ice bath, that's the way that ice bath warms you up, or excuse me, wakes you up, is because it forces your body to warm itself up. Yes, when you get in it, it's cold, but when you get out, your body warms itself up, which is that's how the circadian rhythm works. Is when because I've talked about this before too. Your body is at the lowest temperature it is somewhere around 2 hours before you wake up. And then once you wake up, it gradually increases until it peaks in the afternoon and then it goes back down. That's why things like cold water therapy is best for in the morning, and a sauna is best at night, or a hot shower is best at night, because yes, you're hot while you're in there, but then your body has to force itself to cool down afterwards. And when you cool down, that's how you can enter the deep sleep the better. When you cool down. I mean, I think most people would agree that it's very difficult to sleep in an uncomfortably hot room. Most people like myself, I love to be in a chilly room, when I go to sleep. I cannot stand being hot and trying to go to sleep. It just doesn't work. Yeah. So that I think the sunlight is everything. And that's why also too, people say that like ice baths, cold plunges like that, it helps deep sleep because it helps maintain your circadian rhythms. I don't know. I since I started doing the cold water thing, man, just 3-4 months ago, I have become a big advocate of that. Like they're just like, I can tell you this, when it's one of those things where like when you don't do it, like if you take a couple days off, a week off or whatever it is, you're like, man, I'm ready to get back to that thing. Yes, it sucks when you're in there, the 2, 3, 4 minutes, whatever it is that you do. But when you do it, it's like there's a noticeable difference, you know.
It's a game
Um,
changer.
for sure. For sure. And it's not just because of the athletic recovery, the circadian rhythms, the blood flow, all that stuff. It's like there's a mental battle that you overcome. You know, when you get in that thing, you are winning a mental battle with yourself, and you're doing that first thing in the morning. And then it's like it I think the way scientifically it helps you manage stress is because of the way the adrenaline and stuff like that, it helps your body. It basically trains your body how to act when it's flooded with adrenaline. And flooded is, I use that word loosely because it's, let's say adrenaline is elevated. But it trains your body how to react when you're in that state. But also too, man, just like winning that mental battle with yourself, you know, because sometimes that thing sucks when you're out there at 7 a.m. Like I was out there this morning, it was like 7:20ish, somewhere around there, and it was cold. It was like 28 degrees out there. Like the water was only 42 or 43 degrees, but it was like 20. It was warmer outside or inside the ice bath than it was outside. It was like the lid actually had like the little the dew had frozen. It was like a little frost on top of the thing. I was like, dude. But I mean, you get in there, man, and you win that mental battle with yourself, and it's like, you know, things from that point seem to get easier as far as discipline and maintaining, you know, things that you should do that you don't necessarily want to do, but that are healthy for you.
Right. And it helps you be more capable of adapting to stress and stressors.
Yeah.
It's how we grow. It's how we get stronger. Not all stress is bad. Stress can be good as long as we can adapt to it.
Especially if it's voluntary, if you put yourself in that stressful situation, you know. I'm gonna have to wrap up here shortly. I feel like this past couple hours has just flown by. Like we've covered so much. But that's a good thing that we can actually cover that much in this little span of time. I guess that means we're very efficient. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to go over?
I think we've covered so much. It's been great. I've loved it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything we talked about: the lymphatic system, the diet, sleep, supplements, grounding. So I don't know how I'm going to pinpoint these topics and put them in the title of this thing. I'm gonna have to
Don't
figure
forget
something out.
business and education.
It's everything, man. Like we talked about everything. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we didn't go over. What about just like maybe we'll cover this really quick. What about just like the general importance of like just a health and fitness routine for people? What do you think about that? Because I always say that like your physical health is like a cornerstone for everything else. Because I think everything is influenced by your physical health. You know, so in other words, I understand that like clinical depression is a real thing, and I'm not trying to negate that or say that it's not, but I know also too that physical health, and especially specifically a gym routine or being in the gym, has always helped me with like stressors and anxieties. Fortunately, I'm a person that doesn't really experience a lot of depression, but I do experience things like anxiety sometime or whatever. And it's like the gym has always helped me with that. So, and that's why I say like I'm a big advocate that like having a fitness program, or at least being conscious of your health, your physical health, I think that is like one of the cornerstones for everything in your life, you know, is your mental health, your emotional health. We talk about things like entrepreneurship and having a business. Like you have to be able to adapt and just basically keep up with the flow of things. And I don't feel like if you're not in somewhat of a decent physical condition, that might not be possible. You know, I don't know. I'm just kind of asking, I guess.
For me, and other people can disagree, that's fine. But when I look at our bodies, it's the way we enact our beliefs, and it's the way that we fulfill the calling that's on our lives. It's the way all of this starts to function. And in order to do anything else, we've got to be taking care of ourselves. I'm not a mental health professional whatsoever. That's not my scope of practice. The one thing I do want to help people with is at least creating physiological margin so they can start processing the other mental and emotional things, whether it's trauma or any of that, so that they have the margin to deal with those things in a healthier way. If your blood sugar, for instance, is out of whack and you're constantly managing those ups and downs, you're not going to have the margin to process other things going on in your life or to handle other things well, because that physiological component is out of whack. If you're dehydrated, if you're running on junk food, you're you're going to have so many things out of balance there that you're not operating from your best place. And again, going back to that fight or flight, we can't function well in that chronic state. We need the restorative places so we can not only heal, but so we can create and expand and learn. And so how I view it, a routine for wellness is essential to all of this stuff. It's the foundation of it, because um that's where all of our stuff is formed. So people can disagree with me and they can have really good arguments against it, and I'm always open to that. But I think just taking care of eating good foods, making sure we stay hydrated, getting good sleep, that's going to give you so much margin to achieve other amazing things in your life. And I work with a lot of really cool people. I love my clients. I've been doing this for 16 years. I have met so many amazing people over all these years, and they're very high achievers. They want to do well. They're accomplishing great things in their lives. They're serving people well, but they need that health component to be able to focus, to be able to think clearly, to make wise decisions, because their decisions impact a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And we've just always had this as a component. And I've loved watching how this manifests in their lives, in their successes and their wins, in their relationships. It's so cool, but we have to have that foundation and work on it. It's not something other people can necessarily do for us. We have to make those decisions to be proactive and do it for ourselves, and then we can bring in people to help us. But that routine is so key, and it comes down to
Yeah.
discipline.
Yep. Yeah. I love the way you said that, because when, especially like a person like you who is in a position where you're constantly like your business is like you're interacting with people, you're constantly interacting with people, and so are a lot of other people. So are business owners. Even if you're not a business owner, if whatever job you have, more than likely you're interacting with people. And one of my biggest reasons for supporting this is because if you are conscious of your physical health, if you have a physical health plan, whether it's something as simple as walking every day or every other day, whatever it is, but if you are conscious of your health, you are going to be conscious of what you put into your body. That's the food, that's the water, that's whatever, but that's also the information that you put into your body, the negativity or lack thereof that is around you from, whatever source, whether it's the news or social media or whatever. And like, especially if you're in a position where you interact with people or where you influence people, or where, like you said, some of these people, their decisions influence a lot of people or affect a lot of people, you have to be able to filter out what you allow into your mindset or into your personality, or you can't have a company where you lead hundreds of people, and somebody says something to you that morning on the way to work, and that influences your entire day, because that's gonna bleed into your organization, to every other person that you interact with. And so, but I think like where that starts is one of the key areas where it starts is your physical health, because if you're aware of that, you're aware of all these other things that could be affecting you. Because like once you start taking your physical health seriously, you start taking out basically once you start taking your physical health seriously, you start taking everything else seriously by extension, because it just makes sense. And so I don't know how else to say it and make a better argument for it other than that, because it's not just about being healthy. It's not just about losing the weight or keeping the weight off or whatever it is. I mean, it's about, I guess you could say, mental health is just as important as physical health, but I think the physical health is the vehicle for the mental health. I think that's where you can't just think yourself. I mean, maybe you could. I can't do it. You can't just think yourself into a positive mood or a positive mindset. You know, Like, I mean, the one thing I love about the gym, just like the ice bath, is it is that mental bath. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the gym and I'll be like struggling with the email or something. Like maybe it's like a really, I had a sale I'm trying to make or whatever. I'm just like, oh man, I can't find the words to say on this email. I want it to sound this way. I wanted it to have this kind of message. Then I go to the gym. I'm there for an hour and I'm like, I got it. It's just that clarity, Um, and so I just think that, and also too, like, let's say if you have a family, like you were mentioning earlier, you have a family, well, you want to be around and as healthy as long as possible for that family, and there again, if you have that health program for yourself, everybody connected to you is going to benefit from that because of that, because, you have decades that you can continue this activity because of, you take your health seriously.
My little guy, even he has conversations with me about health. We cook together, so we talk about the ingredients. He talks about getting his minerals right. And so we have these conversations, and I know that I'm impacting him to, number one, build a good foundation of health, but he's already learning about this stuff so it can impact his future.
Yeah, and that's incredible, man. Because I don't think, and it's nothing against my parents or the system, the environment that I grew up in, but I was not really aware of any of this till probably my mid-20s. I mean, I knew the common things. Fast food's bad, soda's bad, sugar's bad, whatever. But to the extent that I do now, like, I mean, this is almost something that I had to kind of teach myself, just listening to other people. And it's just, I don't know, man, but it's also is so easy too, like it's all about the expedient choice and like what's easy and what's convenient. Fast food it takes like a couple minutes to get it, and it's cheap and all this kind of thing. And it's just like, we definitely have to be serious about health if we want it to be if we do anything that's like conducive to our health, we have to be serious about it, because it's so easy to get off track. There's like I think you mentioned earlier, there's a pill for everything. There's a solution for everything. There's a, quick fix for everything. And, those things are, I mean, really what they are is distractions. I think I mentioned this just to kind of go off on a little tangent. I think I mentioned this last time we talked. If I go to a doctor or a medical professional and the first thing they do is try to prescribe me a pill for whatever problem it is, I'm like, all right, I'm out of here. I mean,
And you know what? There's a pill for everything until there's not. And
yeah,
that's where I get a lot of people. They've fallen through the cracks of Western medicine, and the pills don't work anymore. It's like, okay, what do we do? I want to have a quality life, but I don't know what to do. And so that's where I meet people. That's where we work. And it's been so much fun watching people heal. Because at the end of the day, our symptoms talk to us. They're telling us our body is brilliant. It's so intelligent. And our symptoms are the way it communicates. The symptoms we experience are telling us something. They're telling us we have a problem and this is how we heal. And if you
Mhm.
look at, instead of just covering all that up with pills, listen to what your body's saying. It will enlighten a path. Like, obviously you need somebody who knows what they're doing to guide you, but your bodies want to heal. Like, they're incredible. They're so cool. And they're
Well,
very resilient.
that's
But
another thing too. Like, we try to treat the symptom instead of the actual problem. You know, like there are medications that will stop a fever if you have a fever. I understand a fever that's too high is like not good, but a fever for the most part. Can you still hear me?
yes,
Okay, my
your screen
camera.
disappeared, but
Hang on just a second. I do not know. That was weird. Hang on a second. For some reason, my camera cut off. It has plenty of battery power. That was weird. Anyways, we try to treat the symptom. Like if like say for a yeah, I have plenty of battery. I don't know what that was. The fever exists for a reason. There's medication that will like lower the fever for whatever reason. I understand a fever that's too high is like not a good thing, but it's there to fight off the infection. It's there for a reason. Anyways, yeah. That's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down. But man, listen, this has been a great conversation. Like, I'm gonna have to listen to this thing several times just to take in all the content that we talked about.
it's been so much fun. I've loved it.
Do you want to promote your business, or do you have a website or social media or anything that you want to put out there?
My website is defyyourlimits.com, and there are resources on there you can check out. I'm honestly terrible about posting on social media. I stay off of it for the most part. So I think I have 6 posts on Instagram, maybe 8. I'm not very good about being on it. So everywhere, everything you want is on my website. And that's if you ever want to have a chat about health issues you're experiencing, you can just book a call and we can talk about you.
Perfect. Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea to stay off of social media, man. I mean,
I would get kicked off anyway for some of the opinions I have. So
unfortunately, yeah. So one thing I want to ask you before we close out, I kind of ask everybody this towards the end. If you had to if you had to kind of pinpoint, or if you were willing to share maybe one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, it can be related to health or just life in general, just something you would be comfortable sharing. What if you had to kind of say one of the most valuable lessons you've ever learned, what do you think that would be? I know it might be hard to kind of just say one, but just maybe one of the
wow.
most valuable.
Hang on. Are you frozen? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay.
You cut
I'm
out a
sorry.
little bit. I don't know if you heard me or not. I was just saying if you can kind of maybe pinpoint one of the most valuable lessons you ever heard, or I'm sorry, ever learned. It could be related to health or anything.
My grandmother was very ill for a majority of at least her later years, which was my whole life, and I didn't get to know her very well. I took care of her for a long time till she had to go into a nursing home, but I had a friend die at that same time my grandmother's alive, and my grandmother had wanted to die for 30 years. And I was like, my goodness, why does somebody who has this brilliant life ahead of them pass away, and then somebody like my grandmother lives forever and she hates her life? And somebody told me, they're like, Heather, maybe it's so you can learn how to love somebody who has nothing to give you back. And that was like, that moment stopped me. And so that was years and years ago. And as I've lived out life, I really have come to appreciate her and love her, because the reason I ended up in Florida was because of my grandmother, to take care of her. And because I ended up in Florida, this beautiful life has opened up for me and so many opportunities. And I can go back through that entire line, but it's how I have my kids now. It's so many blessings have come because my grandmother was here and I came down here to take care of her. And so that person who couldn't give me anything that I thought, she gave me everything. And I am so grateful for getting older and being able to gain perspective, to realize not to take people for granted, not to take opportunities for granted. And we live in such a culture that's a quick fix and immediate, and we want it now. But if you can take time to look over your life and be grateful for each of the steps along the way, and trust the process, like my life is still unfolding. There's plenty of time to see what more happens, but being grateful for those steps along the way, and learning that it's working for us. Not everything is good, but they can work together for good. And I think that was one of the most important lessons I've learned, to love people like that. And sometimes they have the most significant piece of your life in some way, shape, or form, but learning to be grateful for all of it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the way you put that. I think that's the definition of love, though. You love a person who maybe can't provide anything to you. Unfortunately, these days there's a lot of like conditional love, or conditional likeness to another person, like in the adult world or whatever. I think people their relationship to a person, whether it's business or personal or unfortunately intimate sometimes, is based on what that person can do for them. And I think that's a big source of a lot of pain that we feel these days, because it's not authentic love. I mean, it's not authentic. It's more of like a, I don't know how else to say it other than transactional. And then you were talking about too earlier, when you basically failed the university or the education system you were in, it being one of the biggest things that ever happened, best things that ever happened to you. You were talking about just now about how things unfold the way they should. It might not seem like it in the moment, but sometimes the things is sometimes the things that we in the moment that we wish wouldn't happen to us sometimes end up being the best things that ever happened to us, because they can redirect us to the right path. But just out of curiosity, before you went into the education, did you have this like desire to do what you're doing now? Like anything, excuse me, anything remotely similar?
No, when I was 18 going into college, I had no idea what to do. My mom was a teacher, and that's about all I knew. I knew a bunch of teachers, and so I said, "Well, I'll do that." I had no clue. The only reason I'm doing this is because of quote unquote failure. And it's turned into my greatest success. I love it. I had no idea that all of this stuff was out there, and so many doors have opened for me because of this. It's been so cool to watch. Now, the one thing I did know, I I'm not the best employee. I've never had an employee W-2 job. The only W-2 job I've had is that I'm an employee of my business. So I've had a business for a really long time. I love owning a business. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of strategy, but it is so cool to have it. It's a huge blessing, and I'm really thankful for it. I'm thankful for the people I get to meet, but I truly love the business side of it. A lot of it is interacting with people, but even the finance, the strategy behind all of it, how you grow a business, it has been amazing. And my business is named Defiant Wellness, and that probably speaks a little bit about my personality, why I wouldn't be a good employee. But I've loved it.
I can still hear you. I realized what's going on with my camera. It put a little message up before. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
It put a little message up before it closed out just now that said apparently it's too hot. It needs to cool down. So, but yeah, but no, I appreciate you sharing that there. It's but listen, man, I got to be respectful of your time. I've already taken up a couple hours here. We've talked for quite a while today, I feel like. And so, I will, I'll keep you updated on everything as far as, well, let me close this out and I'll talk to you about the uploading process. But man, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate it. You sharing everything, all your insight, all your wisdom, and really appreciate you doing this with me.
I've loved it. Thanks for having me. This has been great.
Thanks. Hey guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast or enjoyed this episode, you can find more at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can subscribe, like, and share and interact with all of our content. Again, we appreciate it, and we will see you next time.